Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Bill Thornton, SoCalSabre. Today I'm going to talk to you about my first ever trip to Memphis in 2010. It was my first vacation after my big medical fiasco in '09, and I decided I wanted to go to Memphis because it was on my bucket list. And, I'm a big fan of rock and roll and of uh, blues. And so I wanted to see this place. Up in the corner, you can see a picture of the Westin Hotel where I stayed. A little bit pricey, but I guess every once in a while you have to treat yourself. But I guess it's pricey more also for the convenience. Right across the street was the FedEx Forum where the Memphis Grizzlies play. So they get a lot of business from down in there. Then diagonal across is the Rock and Soul Museum. That was pretty neat. I went over there and that took it back to the 20s and 30s and 40s and the history of soul music and rock and how they started getting combined to become rock and roll along with some country. So a lot of good history inside of that building there. And finally, I guess the biggest convenience for me was only one block down the street was Beale Street with all the great music and all of those bars. What a fantastic thing that was uh, to see. You know, uh, but no other a trip to Memphis, if you're a music fan, wouldn't be complete without a trip to Graceland. This is the front entrance to Graceland. I've been there twice. I went back years later with another friend when we were on vacation. And I probably enjoyed the things more the second time because I knew what I was going to be getting into and I had spent more time in different areas. There's a lot of things in there. I'm not going to show you all the pics, but I am going to show you a couple pics. This is one room that you can look at forever. It's all of his record albums and his 45s on the walls. And I forget what's inside. I think there was some sort of costumes inside of those cases. But anyway, pretty cool. This room, I could have this in my house. I could deal with this. This is one of his, I guess, gaming rooms because he did have a pool room too. But he's got the couches and chairs. But if you look up in that far corner back there, you see a whole line of pinball machines. How cool would they have that in your house? There's me. Somebody took my picture by a pink Cadillac. I guess it was famous back in those days, I believe. I may be wrong, but I believe that the first Cadillac he ever bought was a pink one. He bought it for his mother. But inside of this showcase area were a lot of different cars that he owned. And outside there's an airplane area with different airplanes that he owned and so forth. Too much to see in a very short time. And then finally, of course, that's where he's laid out. But also, you go to Memphis, I don't think any trip would be beside Graceland is to go to the Peabody Hotel and see the ducks. Yeah, ducks. And there's the elevator that they use. They live up in the penthouse all night long and in the morning time, they're led down by a narrator and they come down the elevator. When the elevator doors open up, they run like crazy down that red carpet with everybody cheering and the kids and everything. And right behind those two ladies at the far end is a pool of water. It's not real big, as you can see, but those ducks get in that pool and they stay in there all day long. They don't ever get out. They stay in there until their work day's done. When the guy blows his whistle or whatever he does, and they come out, they go down the red carpet, they get on the elevator, and they go back up to the penthouse. And that was pretty sweet to see. Then I went over the Sun Studios. Yeah, rock and roll heaven there. History, lots of great things, came out of Sun Studios in the early days. There's a wall inside of there with all of the 45s that they produced from all the artists that were signed with them at the time. There was a lot of great young artists. This here's a picture that was taken became known as the $1 Million Quartet in those days. It was an impromptu recording session that happened when all four of these gentlemen just happened to show up in the studio. Elvis had already signed the year before with RCA, and so he was over there, I guess, to pick up a past check or something. Carl Perkins was in the process of recording his current album, and he was in, and he asked young Jerry Lee Lewis there to come in and play some piano on the tracks. And the other guy was Johnny Class. I can't remember what Johnny was in there for. But they were all in there, and they started messing with the piano, and they started, jamming and singing. And the engineer, being as smart as he was, he hit the record button up in the studio, and thus the $1 Million Quartet. Then there's a big plaque about the history of Elvis with Sun Studios. Of course, most people know that he started with Sun Studios, and him and Sam really liked each other. The problem Sam had is he was getting into some financial difficulties back in those days, and so he sold the rights to Elvis to RCA Records before Elvis became real famous. Such a financial loss that was. Good for RCA, bad for Sam. And so that was a very nice visit. Went back there the second time with my friend also. But there's a lot of history in and around Memphis. Even when you're walking down the streets, you'll see signs like this that'll explain about the different locations and about people and their history and so forth, all over the place. Then walking down, Hollywood has their Walk of Fame, and Memphis has some other stuff. There's the home of W.C. Handy. I guess it was moved, transported from Mobile or somewhere, wherever he was born and raised, and it was moved up to here because Handy got the label of the father of the blues. He was a musician, and he never really played the blues at the beginning. He was a jazz player, but he was the first to record the blues. Thus, he was labeled with the name the father of the blues. And then, like the Walk of Fame, and I couldn't get this to turn around, so you'll have to excuse me. They have these musical notes all over the streets. Not a lot of hands, but a lot of musical notes up and down the streets with the names of various artists. This happens to be Jerry Lee Lewis's musical note and his handprints. But lots of stuff to see. In the last couple ones on here, we're from a more sadder time. I did go by there. This is the Lorraine Hotel. It got its notoriety in a bad way. This is the door where Martin Luther King was assassinated. That reef has been hanging there. They probably changed it out, of course, but there's been a reef there in place ever since that day. And it was back the second time. We got some better pictures of it the second time, but I'm not talking about that trip now. So, some pretty nice, neat stuff, there. And, now we're back to Beale Street. As you walk up and down Beale Street, even in the daytime, you find venues like this in between bars, in the alleys, in the back part of bars, and in the park and everything where different bands are playing. They normally playing just for tips to get some recognition, and hopefully they can get a gig and get inside the clubs because all the clubs have live music in them. And so besides sightseeing, you can go up and down the street and have a couple brews, listen to some music, and if you're hungry, check out the barbecue in Memphis. Really good stuff. And then towards dusk that night, that was Thursday night, it was bike night hosted by BB King's place. Let's see, I got the t-shirt from my visit that night, and the bikes just kept rolling in and rolling in and rolling in forever until we got to this point here. Where it was nighttime, the streets were full, bikes all up and down, and people having a really good time. So I guess this is a good place to leave it for now and not bore you too much. I hope it didn't bore you. If you like what you saw in this video, go out and hit the like button. Give me a little bit of recognition. If you want to hear some more from me, hit the subscribe button and click the bell, and you'll know when I'm coming back out with something new. Yeah, and also if you'd like to, hear me talk about something else on this Wednesday SoCalSabre Talks Things, put it in the remarks. I'll put it on my list and consider it. I got this idea from my son to start talking about some of my travels. So this was my first one. There'll be other ones to follow and other things too. So until then, thank you very much for watching. Be kind to others and stay safe.